Welcome back to Travel with Tony and Nick. On this channel, we share cruise reviews, affordable travel strategies, casino cruise tips, excursions, and what it's really like balancing frequent travel with busy professional lives. Today, we're taking you with us to explore the island of Mykonos during our Greek Isles cruise on Odyssey of the Seas. We decided to try something different and book through Shore Excursions Group instead of going directly through Royal Caribbean. This was our first time using Shore Excursions Group, mainly because the Royal Caribbean excursion we originally wanted, the Ultimate Mykonos Tour, was completely sold out and significantly more expensive. The excursion we booked was called Exclusive Mykonos Old and New, and overall, the booking process was pretty straightforward. Our tour started at 8:30 in the morning, and Shore Excursions Group emailed us electronic tickets ahead of time. One important thing to know is they specifically ask for a printed copy of the ticket, so make sure to print them before leaving for your cruise, because they did check it at the meeting point. This excursion was designed to show both sides of Mykonos, the traditional, older parts of the island, along with some of the newer and more scenic areas. And throughout this video, I'll show you what the experience was actually like, how it compared to Royal Caribbean excursions, and whether we would book it again. The first stop of this excursion was the town of Ano Mera, but before getting there, we made a few scenic stops along one of the most famous beaches of Mykonos. Mykonos has a reputation for being one of the major beach destinations in Greece, and after seeing the coastline in person, it's easy to understand why. There were beautiful homes along the water, beach clubs, and new hotels being built all over the island. This definitely felt like a place that deserves more than one single cruise stop, and it's somewhere we would absolutely come back for a longer vacation in the future. One thing we really enjoy about cruise excursions is that they give you a small sample of each destination, almost like an appetizer, helping you figure out which places you'd want to revisit someday. When you travel halfway across the world, we think it's worth making the most out of every port day and really experiencing each destination rather than just staying on the ship or wandering around aimlessly. Once we arrived in Ano Mera, we got a glimpse of a quieter and more traditional side of Mykonos. We spent about an hour there, walking through the village, enjoying a small Greek coffee and traditional sweet pastry, which was excellent and included on this excursion. Compared to the busy tourist areas near the cruise port, Ano Mera felt much more relaxed and local, and it ended up being a really enjoyable start to the day. In touring this part of the island, we got to stop at a traditional Greek monastery. Probably the most interesting story connected to this part of the tour was how the monastery received its name. According to local tradition, an icon of the Virgin Mary was found floating in the sea near Tourlos, and the monastery eventually became known as Panagia Tourliani in honor of that discovery. We were able to walk through the monastery, take photos, and spend time appreciating both the history and the peaceful atmosphere. Again, compared to the busy beach areas and cruise crowds, this felt much quieter and a more traditional side of Mykonos. The final part of the excursion brought us down into the main town of Mykonos Town, which was probably the most visually beautiful part of the entire day. Our tour guide did a great job throughout this section of the tour. She spoke slowly and clearly, which made it easy for everybody in the group to follow along, and only about 15 people were in the group in total. The experience felt much more relaxed and manageable than some of the larger group excursions. Walking through Mykonos town is exactly what you'd picture when you think of Greek islands. White buildings, narrow alleyways, blue accents, flowers hanging off balconies, and winding streets going up and down the hills toward the water. Our guide explained the history of the town, the architecture, and how the maze-like streets were originally designed to confuse pirates centuries ago. At the same time, this was probably one part of the excursion that we felt you could easily do on your own. The town is extremely walkable, and much of the experience is simply wandering around the streets and exploring. Even our guide mentioned that anyone who wanted to break off and explore independently was welcome to do so. One reason we stayed with the full tour was because it included the ferry ticket back to the tender port, which otherwise would have cost about 2.5 euros per person. Since the town itself is a decent distance from where the ship tenders dock, having that transportation included made things simple and convenient. During the tour, we also stopped at the famous Mykonos windmills overlooking the town and coastline. They were beautiful to see in person, and many of them actually have been converted into vacation rentals and private properties today. One thing that surprised us was how upscale and luxurious parts of Mykonos felt. There were high-end stores, designer shopping, beach clubs, restaurants, and nightlife venues everywhere, and you could immediately understand why people come here for longer vacations. It felt like a place that you could spend the day at the beach and then enjoy shopping, restaurants, and nightlife in town afterwards. Since this was still a cruise excursion, we didn't experience the nightlife side of Mykonos, but the tour lasted about 4 hours and still left several hours afterwards for shopping and exploring on our own before heading back to the ship. One of the goals my mom had during this trip was to buy some authentic jewelry from Greece, and Mykonos ended up being the perfect place for that. There were countless boutiques and small jewelry shops throughout the town selling handmade sterling silver and other locally crafted pieces. She ended up finding several sterling silver pieces with opal that she absolutely loved. One helpful thing to know if you shop in Greece is that taxes are usually already included in the display prices. However, if you're not a citizen of the European Union, many stores can provide paperwork for a VAT tax refund, which allows you to potentially get some of those taxes or all of those taxes refunded when leaving Europe. Most of the higher-end shops were very familiar with the process and could help walk people through it. Overall, this excursion with Shore Excursions Group was excellent, and we would absolutely book with them again in the future. Everything ran smoothly, the groups were smaller than many cruise line excursions, and they guarantee that you'll make it back to your ship on time. For us, this ended up being a great way to experience Mykonos while still feeling organized and stress-free.